I think a good follow-up there, and this is probably super important, very technical, is so, being someone who has a history of the Marine Corps and a proud Marine Corps vet, we say "oorah." What exactly does the Space Force say? Because I know like Army says "hoorah" with there's an H there. What Space Force is? Because you have to have a guttural chant that you do. So what is it?
And George, that's a great question. I think right now, I think we're still developing as a service and our culture is still evolving. And so oftentimes what I'll hear people say from a podium or at the end of a speech is they'll say "semper supra," which means always above. And so you'll hear that often. Now, as far as a one-line guttural or a one-word guttural response, I don't think we've gotten there yet. But I look forward to the day that we do get one, if we do.
I love the evolution there. Partially, we are talking about Space Force and your recruiting for Space Force and also the Air Force. And there's the evolution of the culture that will become Space Force for what people will be like, oh, when they think of this, they think of Space Force. So what do you, from a civilian perspective, what do you call a person who's in Space Force?
Great. And I remember when this happened. And we were all waiting on pins and needles, waiting to hear what we would be called. Because right now we have, soldiers, sailors, Marines, as George brought up, Coast Guardsmen, and we have airmen. And so what we would be called was a big question in our minds, and we were all waiting. And it was at the 1-year anniversary of the creation of the Space Force that the name for Space Force professionals was announced. And so all personnel, both officer and enlisted, who either transferred or entered into the Space Force are now called Guardians. And so that's what we are called. We are called Guardians, and we proudly wear that title.
I like it. I like it. I'm a big Marvel Universe fan. So anything with Guardians in it, I'm 100%, I am Groot supportive of that. So I have some highly technical questions for you. So because you're in recruiting, if you don't know, just say, hey, we don't know, but we're growing. Because first off is, how many people are currently in Space Force? Approximately, don't tell me anything secret. And how fast or large will Space Force grow over the decade?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. The last numbers that I saw, and I'll give you some approximations, and these numbers might be a bit dated, but last that I saw, there were about 5,000 military and about 6,000 civilians in the Space Force. Now, going forward into the future, unfortunately, I can't predict what the end strength is going to be in the next 5 or 10 years, as that conversation is well above my pay grade. But what I can tell you is that the original intent of the Space Force was to create a lean and agile service from the ground up. And our Chief of Space Operations, General Raymond, he said it best when he said that big organizations are slow. We have to remain lean, agile, and fast so we can shorten decision-making cycles and acquisition processes. Therefore, it is absolutely critical that we continue to inspire, engage, and recruit the next generation of those Guardians.
So that gives me a follow-up question there. So when we're talking about recruiting that next generation of Guardians, I mean, you come from a very unique background. So your last duty station, you were with Dr. Moser, Chief Scientist of Space Force, and now you're over here in recruiting with your command. Tell me how and what you learned there is going to, uniquely allow you to access and talk to young people about Space Force.
Absolutely. And let me just tell you, I guess, the journey that brought me to recruiting, and then maybe a little bit about my background. What brought me to recruiting is actually pretty simple, is that I raised my hand to volunteer. I wanted to come to recruiting. I believe in the mission, and in my opinion, this is one of the very few jobs in the Department of Defense where you have the ability to change lives right in the community where you live and work. So for me personally, my hope is that my unique background will help me to connect with folks who are searching for experiences like I've had. And we all use our stories to connect with other people. And that's what I'm hoping to help support and to give to our recruiting efforts here in the California area.